I have used way too many Apple Watches, a few Samsung watches, and even more Android Wear watches back in the day, but the Google Pixel Watch is something that I wanted to love, but actually like it the least. And surprisingly, the hardware really isn't the issue except for the processor. This is running the Samsung Exynos 9110, which really isn't a surprise given that all Tensor chips are made by Samsung. This is very similar to the W920 that's found in the Samsung Watch 4, and performance is ultimately the same thing. Operations are kind of clunky and honestly feel like they dropped the screen refresh rate for some things. It really just makes a watch feel like an old watch, even though it's barely 2 years old. This is paired with 2GB of RAM, which is slightly more than the Watch 4, but doesn't really change much. It even has 32GB of storage, double what is found on the Watch 4 again, and the same storage RAM combo found in the Pixel Watch 3. This is running Wear OS 4, which is technically Android 13. The naming is weird to me, but Android 14, or Wear OS 5, is coming out soon, but apparently it's been pulled temporarily because it was soft bricking watches. Nice. Regardless, the OS feels like a Google version of what Samsung puts on their watches, with the tiles and apps, but with the contrasty Google feel to it. Powering this is a 294 milliamp cell, which barely powers it in itself. With Fitbit active, getting 2 days of battery life feels impossible. I was consistently ending the day with 60%, while having the always-on display left me with 30%. I believe the Fitbit app is the issue, which I'll probably do a little bit more research and splice a clip in for my findings. The design, though, is an interesting one. The screen is a decent, well, I can't actually find how many inches the screen is on Google's spec page, but apparently it's a 1.2 inch 330 pixel per inch AMOLED display that has huge bezels, making this watch feel even smaller thanks to that screen and the 41mm diameter. It wasn't until the Watch 3 that we actually got a bigger watch, which is very strange to me. At 36 grams without the band, this is the heaviest Pixel watch at the 41mm size, but it's because it's the only one with stainless steel. Yes, the cover glass is Gorilla Glass 5, but the frame is a nice stainless steel for half the watch, essentially. The screen is nice, but when you see the bezels, it just feels so small. The flashlight is a good way to see this and show off the up to 1000 nits, though it's alright. I would say hitting about 500 to 700 nits in normal usage. Connectivity-wise, we have Bluetooth 5, which is perfectly fine, but also Wi-Fi 2.4, and this does come in a Wi-Fi only or LTE version, the latter that I have. The bottom is where all the health tracking stuff is, including a blood oxygen sensor. This is also where you can wirelessly charge the watch, but it's also very picky. It doesn't charge off my Pixel 9, but also false charges on the Samsung watch charger that I have. So, not too universal? This is a 5 ATM watch, meaning that you need 5 ATMs to pay for it. Of course, it really means 5 atmospheres, which means up to 50 meters of water resistance, but personally, I would never recommend that. As weird as it feels, there is a speaker and microphone on the watch, so clearly you can make calls on it. We do live in a year that is past 2015 after all. But there is more to the watch than just the specs. Wearing the watch is fine. I barely noticed that it's on here, even though it is a pretty tall watch. The always-on display is okay, not being like their phones, but also not as bad as the Apple Watches. Of course, that comes at a 30% battery hit per day, which is kind of wild. As someone that has used watches for a long time, you would think that I would do everything on my watch, and that just isn't true. I will occasionally accept a call if the situation allows, but overall, a watch is two things for me: a pager and an activity tracker. I love the feeling of seeing a notification or call come in and being able to decide if you want to respond to it or ignore it. When a notification comes in, there's actions that you can do when you scroll down and even decide to open it on your phone. This and the crown is nice. The crown actually scrolls well with the other button that is semi-programmable. You have to hold the crown to power it off, which is kind of weird, but you do get used to it. As an activity tracker, I kind of hate this. It grossly overestimates how many calories that you burn, and if you're coming from an Apple Watch or even Samsung Watch, you'll be surprised. They both measure the same thing, but the Pixel Watch is definitely way more. So what it measures is your basal metabolic rate, or BMR, which is perfectly fine. On an Apple Watch, I will be beyond surprised to crack 1,000 calories and over 15,000 steps. But on the Pixel Watch, I had 11,000 steps and burned 5,700 calories in one day. That would have been maybe 800 calories on the Apple Watch. I get that it measures calories burned differently and would be alright, but it does kind of lie. See, if I put the watch on past 8 a.m., I would have burned over 600 calories, while later we'll have more calories. So this is not using any data and just judging based on my weight and my height. At least that's what I'm assuming before you put on the watch. Of course, as a watch, you have many options. There's no need truly to compare this to the Apple Watch because the Pixel Watch only works on Android, not iOS. Having used the Samsung Watch 4, this is a very similar experience, obviously, just with the screen feeling way smaller. Cost-wise, fairly similar in the used market, but now that I'm using the Samsung Watch 7, I realize that the Watch 7 is clearly better. It is strange to me that Google really waited until the Pixel Watch 3 to add a larger size, but at the same time, this watch does feel big, just not the screen. On the Apple Watch, it does feel like the watch and workout stuff is built in, even though they're all technically separate apps, just like the Samsung Health, Samsung Wear, Pixel Watch, and Fitbit. But it does feel strange that it's not all handled in one app. It feels weird when you open up the dark-moded Pixel Watch app, and then you get forced into the light mode Fitbit app for everything else. I do like the breakdown of activity per hour, but again, the BMR for measuring calories is so weird to me. Like I said, there's days where I can almost start the day at 1,000 calories, making you feel like you did so much, but also making you question the accuracy of the measurements in the first place. I would notice that the Apple Watch and Samsung Watch are pretty close in calories, with Samsung kind of overestimating, but one thing the Pixel Watch does the best is tracking heart rate and steps. Those in my tests have been super accurate and probably a better way to measure activity that you do. There is a Fitbit Premium, which people complain about, but for $80 plus a year or $10 a month, this is what you get. A sleep score and more sleep options would be nice, but for $10 a month, I can just get a Samsung Watch that measures that already. To be fair, I haven't used this for sleeping, so I might splice a little picture or video in that as well. But yeah, it is kind of annoying that you don't even get a sleep score. So in reality, you really just get the basics. Remember that blood oxygen sensor that I talked about? Well, apparently it's only used for sleeping. Really? Now let me tell you about some of the issues that I had with this watch. So a glitch that I found happens when you turn off the always on display. How this glitch is triggered is when I will go on a walk or run or do any exercise really. The watch will automatically track it, asking me if I want to start a workout. I'll select the workout, which turns on the always on display for that workout. When you end the workout, the always on display ends as well. But if you don't end the workout manually, after a while it will ask you if you want to end the workout after resting. I notice when I end it here, it seems to turn on the always on display. It's not every time, but it has happened quite a few times. Another issue that I found is that when you turn the watch to wake the screen, it actually requires a decent turn. Sometimes you find yourself in situations where you can't do a full turn, so this is kind of annoying. Turning the face straight up does not trigger the screen to wake. Again, another thing that happens a decent amount of times to where I actually noticed it. Lastly, like I said, the battery is just bad. It is small, but the heart rate tracking all day, even when you have it on the charger, has to be the reason why. And the blood oxygen sensor only works during sleeping, and possibly only with Fitbit Premium. Now, that's annoying. At the end of the day, this is a good watch for a few reasons. One, I think that the design is neat. The way the band attaches is different, but also very easy to use. The crown is truly the best way to maneuver a watch, and Google isn't ashamed to somewhat copy Apple, if you consider that copying in the first place. Secondly, this is Wear OS, which kind of reminds me of Android Wear, and reminds me that I'm not really missing too much. The use of Fitbit over Google Fit is kind of strange, as even as simple as Fitbit is, Google Fit is technically missing more. As much as I kind of don't care for Samsung devices, I honestly think that the Watch 7 is obviously the better choice, but you also get so much more activity stats when compared to Google's offerings. Other than processor and physical size, I don't really see a need to upgrade to the Watch 3, so I'll leave it at that. This is a nice try for Google and actually a good price if you want to get this classy stainless steel look for cheap, but there are really too many downsides to this watch. The heart rate tracking just kills the battery life way too much, even today. Hopefully Wear OS 5 fixes this issue, but so far that seems like a flop. And that's my review of the interesting Google Pixel Watch. I have to say this is my least favorite watch of the three that I rotate, but I do enjoy the design and lightweight the most. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and Pixel 9 reviews as well, and as always, thanks for watching. Get it? Watching? Alright, time for the iPhones.